Hello, and welcome to Collapse Club, where our topic is how are we to live in the time of collapse? I'm David Baum in Seattle, and with me today are Doug, Della, Pietra, and Steve Aman from New York. Hello, Doug and Steve.
Hi, David.
Hi.
You guys run a course called Resilience and Acceptance in the Face of Collapse. What is your course about?
Steve, go for it.
Yeah, okay. Well, the course is obviously as the title implies, it's about resilience. It's about awareness of collapse. It's about acceptance around collapse, and it's about collapse itself. All of those rolled into one thing. Um, when we when we first started thinking about this a year ago, putting this course together, the probably the biggest part of this was draw for us was being pulled to the acceptance part of what we've seen around collapse. I think the three of us developers came to collapse awareness a number of years ago, and it was desire to move into the acceptance piece that kind of motivated us to get into this place. We have 9 sessions in the course. We start the first week is the introduction. The second week, we go into tools for inner resilience. The third week is the great unraveling or collapse. After that is emotional response to collapse. Week 5 is adaptation. Week 6 is indigenous wisdom in the original instructions. 7 is outer resilience. 8 is acceptance. And then the final session is kind of a wrap up, what we call weaving the strands together. Um,
Thank you. Doug, what does someone get out of taking this course?
Yeah, I think what we found, and we have about 85 people who have taken the course or are in the process of taking the course right now in our seventh course offering. Um, People are really learning about what collapse means to them and how it impacts their life and community. And it's also opening up people to um, maybe be thinking a little bit about how they live in relationship, not only with other humans, but with the more than humans and the earth. And as Steve mentioned, adaptation, indigenous wisdom with the original instructions really invites people to kind of rethink their worldview and the way we've always done things, and in many ways, the narratives and stories that have um, really created the predicament that we find ourselves in. So it's a great opportunity for all of us to reflect on where we've been, where we are now, how we got here, and and really, all right. So what is mine to do now? If we take a breath, what is mine to do in the midst of the predicament?
If I want to take this course, can I do it now?
well, not right this minute. We're getting ready to offer a course offering beginning next week, and that course has been filled up for some time. We have a waiting list. We have people that have trained to be course leaders that are going to be offering courses in the future. There's another one beginning mid-May, and we fully expect to be more people stepping up to become course leaders as time goes on.
Great. I will get the contact information from you and put it in the video description below. Let me ask, what does resilience mean? What does it mean to be resilient in the face of collapse?
Hmm. Well, I'll speak about that from my own experience because it was about 4.5 years ago when I first heard of the word adaptation in relation to climate change. And as I started really looking into that, it brought me to Meg Wheatley and some of her writings and video work on the topic of collapse and activism And from there, I got into Jem Bendel's work and deep adaptation. And at first, for me, resilience meant how do we collapse proof our lives? How do we collapse proof our community? And even though Jem in his paper says this is inevitable, that was not my take 4.5 years ago. I was still very much of, hey, we can fix this. We can find a way out. We need to work hard. We need to work collaboratively, collectively. So resilience really was we're going to find a way to collapse proof ourselves and our community, and that was resilience. For me today, resilience really has to do with an inner way of being with the inevitability of collapse. That collapse acceptance isn't about resignation. Collapse acceptance isn't about giving up. Collapse acceptance isn't, hey, we don't have any work left to do, but really resilient living is living in an acceptance that collapse is underway, it's happening, we can't stop it, and we can make space for that, be with it, and that there's really important action and work to be done in the midst of collapse.
Steve, let me ask you, if collapse is indeed inevitable, and that presumably means our own death and the end of civilization as we know it, what is left to do? Why bother to do anything?
Hmm. Yeah, great question. Um, well, first of all, I think for as long as I can recall, the act of being of service has been extremely valuable to me personally. And so, in the face of anything, what is mine to do? Um, just it is a very rewarding place to be to take some action of some sort. Is collapse inevitable? I see it happening in a dozen or several dozen places around the globe and on so many different fronts. What is it going to look like? What does it look like from day to day? Who knows? And so, what keeps me resilient and what keeps me in a place of wanting to do things um, is coming from a place of love, first of all, and choosing not to come from fear, which is really easy to do, and it clearly does have to be a choice for me. And when I do that, it becomes pretty quickly apparent uh, the choices that I have, the things that I can do that are mine to do. I have a great granddaughter. Spending more time with her is a choice and a want, and um, I'll have something to offer her by choosing that way. I've planted a million trees literally in my life, and I've got trees coming next week that I'm going to continue to plant. I don't know if anybody will be here to enjoy them or not, aside from some of our relatives, other than the two-legged relatives that inhabit this planet. I'm going to plant them anyways because it's a piece of what's mine to do right now. And planting trees is in my blood.
This is a question I think that haunts all of us who are involved in the collapse space, as it were, which is if we see a short timeline for the world as we know it, then the things we do today may not have a long effect. And the question that I ask is, all right, I still feel like working. And I know that what I do makes a difference. But if it doesn't make a difference in sort of history, in the timeline of the world, where does it make a difference? Or how? If you understand what I'm asking, maybe you have a reply.
Well, I'll take a stab at that, David. And I think I've heard other people that you've interviewed maybe, um, take a stab at this as well in the past. Um, so for Steve and I, and also Mary Gleason, who was the third course developer, her what is is hers to do expanded last year, so she gave it over to Steve and I to continue developing the course. But one of the one of the key, let's say, fundamental foundational pieces for us is about living in the present moment, and I know many of your other guests have spoken about that in their interviews as well. So if right now matters, and if this present moment is really all that I have, then doing what is right, um, and not because there's an outcome attached to it, matters, makes a difference right now. So it removes the um, I guess maybe the burden, or the expectation that there has to be some historical later time benefit to it because it matters right now. And I think one of your guests many interviews ago, and we actually include it in the course, used the phrase that it nourishes his or her spirit to do the right thing. So that for me is really what matters.
What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, well, I mean, Doug hit it on the head when he says being in the now, being in the present moment. I mean, there's no substitute for that, and it's so easy for me to get wrapped up in thinking about the future, because that's the way I was brought up. That's the culture I live in. That we're just constantly led in that direction, and I still do it. There's no question I still do it. I Part of my reason for taking action, even though, as you say, it in the possible advent that there is no future, um, if it's possible to reduce the suffering of somebody down the road or take an action that beyond my comprehension and understanding maybe leads to saving one species down the road, that's certainly worthwhile. And in the meantime, I get to go out and be of service again and be in the moment. And that I just can't put a value on the reward of that for me. So that's a great way of living in the moment.
Tell me a little bit about yourselves. How did you come to the point where you were devoting your work to creating a course like this?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, Jem Bendel's paper was very influential for me. It was really the introduction of this idea of collapse that I really didn't, I guess I didn't really know about. That was in September of 2018 when I read his paper. Um, and I'm sorry, 2019. And I really, from there, grappled with this idea of inevitability, really resisted that. Um, I think with many of the common beliefs that we can do anything if we put our minds to it, we can fix this. Nothing is impossible. Nothing is beyond our ability. Um, and then the pandemic hit, and I think there was a sense of vulnerability in the pandemic. I work for a community hospital, and um, so, I saw the effects of the pandemic every single day that I went to work. I lived with the anxiety every night coming home and just wondering, okay, am I going to get COVID? Am I going to get sick? And what's going to happen? And all the impact that that had on hospitals and healthcare. And I think that gave me an opportunity to reflect in a different way. It gave me an opportunity to slow down. Steve and I are a part of a resilience group that actually started meeting on March 10th, 2020, 2 days before the World Health Organization declared the pandemic. And we started meeting, there were 7 of us, and we started meeting by Zoom every Thursday for about 6 months, and then we went to an every other week cadence, and that really became community. And we reflected on resilience and collapse and all of these kinds of things. And so the course emerged from that group. And I'll let Steve kind of talk about that, because he and Mary were the first 2 to embark on this, and I joined them a few weeks after they began. But for me, this was a way to really kind of make sense of, dive into, immerse myself in the inevitability of collapse, and just try and begin to do some meaning making.
Have you been in healthcare all your life?
I haven't. I have been in healthcare for 15 years, and prior to that, I was actually a Roman Catholic priest. I was a priest for 11 years as an assistant pastor, and then as a pastor, and then left that in 2007, and taught 1 year at my alma mater undergraduate college in religious studies, and then went into healthcare in 2008.
Well, that's a discussion we're going to have. I want to know what a former Catholic priest thinks about what's happening. But now, Steve, please,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
led up to the course for you?
So I think I've been on a collision course with this inevitability all my life. I grew up on a farm, fruit farm, and and I actually I lived a very significant piece of Silent Spring that Rachel Carson wrote about, um, literally watching the wildlife disappear from the farm that I grew up on. My dad was he was uh, a modern farmer who post World War II bought into totally into the uh, agricultural agent um, selling of pesticides, and things changed in my childhood and teenage years. I could see it changing. Um, Spent a lot of time in the woods when I could escape farm chores, and um, uh, went down a bit of a rabbit hole for a while and ended up getting sober 31 years ago. And my road to recovery took me into some personal growth work, and that allowed me to just pay more attention than ever to the natural world. I mean, I'd been drawn to it since I was a kid, and I never stopped tapping into that. I ended up taking a naturalist training course, and not trained in being a writer, but I learned to love to write about the natural world. And I don't know, aside from an awareness that things were going downhill over the course of my lifetime in terms of the environment. And actually, there was a stage there in the 60s and 70s where I saw things getting better. Our local water bays off of Lake Ontario, which were horribly polluted, actually got cleaned up significantly, and other things, positive things happened. But it seemed like about the time of Jimmy Carter and moving into the Reagan area that things started to go south again, pretty rapidly and pretty significantly. So, as Doug said, this resilience group that we formed um, was kind of like seeing the need to connect with other people who were likewise seeing the decline of the natural world all around us, and other things too, democracy erosion, and plastic in the ocean, and on and on. Uh, we started meeting and forming of that community really revealed itself as a healing process and sort of a life preserver to grab. And uh, when COVID emerged, what dawned on me right away was we're seeing a glimpse of what is coming with the supply lines shut down and the healthcare system turned upside down, and just so many other cataclysmic things that came about from the pandemic. We're seeing a little bit of what is to come, and okay, what can I do about it? That's the collapse seems inevitable, and I want to move into a place of acceptance. And I don't even know what that means when I started asking myself that question.
Yes, it surely seems that the time is right for this kind of thing. Um, Let me ask you about the relationship of your course and more broadly our community, the collapse community, to the wider world. We are sometimes accused of being insular and focusing on ourselves when what we should be doing is out there trying to change things and make things better. So my question is, what good does it do for people like us to gather as we do to talk with each other? And are we doing anything more than just making ourselves feel better?
I'll take a first stab at that one, David. That you ask great questions.
Thank you.
So, in my experience so far, with those that I've been in contact with in the collapse awareness, collapse acceptance, talk collapse community, I am not seeing or observing or encountering people who are throwing their hands up in the air and just saying, forget it, it's inevitable. This is fate. Let's just, what's the point? In fact, I'm really finding that everyone in this community is very thoughtful, um, very um, has an interior capacity for reflection, um, is loving, caring, generous, compassionate, um, generally has a sense of gratitude for what is in their lives. So I think from that experience, that has freed me up, not to be caught in, fear, terror, uncertainty, anxiety, or any of those things that seem pretty normal and natural to experience with the, let's say, first awareness of collapse, to the ability to be able to move beyond that and really embrace life and live life fully, and in an engaged way. So for me, that's been my experience with the collapse community.
Hmm. Yeah, I'll just add to that. A wise man once told me that I can't I can't be any good to anybody else if my cup isn't full and overflowing. And I think there's great wisdom to that. And so for me to tap into the wisdom of these groups and these communities, first of all, I'm taking care of myself, and that's not a selfish thing if I'm coming from a place of love and not coming from a place of fear. And my desire to be there to be of service to others, um, that comes from a place of being grounded, and that's where this work is providing me with that platform. And I think it's providing that kind of a platform for all of us that are doing this work. And with us, a small group initially being grounded, it certainly is something that's going to be needed as collapse uh, accelerates and expands. And so the more we can be in that space, it's not being selfish. It's not being self-centered. I don't believe for an instant. It's it's doing the work that we need to do right in this moment and take us to the place that we're supposed to be.
Yeah, my thought on that is that um, you need to be, as you say, grounded yourself before you embark on any kind of work. Because if you take off and you're unsteady, you're going to be either ineffective or even doing the wrong kind of work. It's like you need to know where you're coming from before you set out to make change or affect other people or affect the world. You got to start from a place, excuse me, of clarity and understanding of yourself. I think that's part of what's going on. I also believe, though, that our actions have a spiritual dimension and that everything we do does, in fact, reverberate throughout the entire cosmos. So it's important to be doing the right thing as best we can understand that. So that's part of where I'm coming from.
And what you said a moment ago, David, about it could be doing the wrong thing. I think Doug and I are very affirmed in this work being the right thing right now, and that's based on, first of all, our own inner feelings about it. It feels right in our gut and in our soul. Secondly, because of the feedback we're getting from people, there's a real clear recognition that we're providing something that some group of people really are feeling a strong need to have in their lives.
I
When
wanted
we
to ask you, I'm sorry.
well, when we have the introduction session, the first session, one of the first things we do is ask people to introduce themselves and um, just say a sentence or two about what it is they hope to get out of the course or why they're coming to the course. And the three main responses we get is, I want to learn more about collapse, or I want to learn more about resilience, or I want to learn more about acceptance. And based on feedback we're getting at the end, they're getting what they came for, by and large.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about your interactions with the people who take the course. What do you witness in the journey that they take when they're working with you?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're really witnessing um, a couple of things. One, at the individual level, people are they're really present. They are speaking from the heart. We really encourage people to share. So the format that we have for the course is when we get together for the 9 sessions. There's 75 minutes long, and the great majority, 95% of that 75 minutes, is in either small group, 3-person breakout sessions if we're by Zoom, or 2 or 3 people if it's an in-person gathering, and large group sessions where the whole group is together, and based on discussion questions for the session content. And people are very open. They're vulnerable. We get a sense that they acclimate to the space that we've created. We start in session 1 with ground rules and ask the whole group of participants to come up with and then agree to our sharing ground rules. So whatever those are going to be, how do we make safe space for people to share? And obviously confidentiality and what's said here stays here is one of the key things that each of the groups usually puts down. So we see that happening, and we see over time at the collective a real sense of community building. People referencing one another, or so and so said this last week, or they said this, and I'd like to add to that. So there is this emergence of thought that's beyond me and myself to we and ourselves. Many people have actually talked about how this has been transformative to them. It has been a spiritual experience. It's challenged their worldviews and helped perhaps to shift a worldview to something that's maybe more open and life-centered, reverence for life.
A number of people have said when they first get on the weekly call, I couldn't wait for Tuesday night to roll around again, and that's that's obviously a strong affirmation of how much that group is meaning to them within a very short time. Um, yeah, it's been an interesting journey. The Doug told about the what the sessions are like, the actual Zoom sessions. The homework is a mixture of video clips that we've pulled from a lot of different sources, podcasts and articles and so on. And so there's a few hours of homework for people to do in between, and that's the real heart of the information side of the course. And I think what we've experienced is that there's people on the whole spectrum of understanding what collapse is about. Some people are coming in and it's really their first serious taste of it, and other people have been aware of collapse for some time, and everybody in between. Regardless, it seems like even those that have come in with the most knowledge about collapse are still learning important pieces about it. As did we when we put the course together. It was one of our biggest challenges as course developers was discerning and deciding what to leave out, because there's so much good material out there on the topic by some really smart and wise people.
Well, it sounds to me like you have developed an exercise that ticks the boxes. That is to say, you help people acknowledge the reality of collapse, you help them to process their feelings about it. Most importantly, perhaps, you nurture connection between them, and finally, you embrace the transformation that people can undergo. Focusing just in closing, let's focus on the connection part. What do you think it is that's important about creating a safe space for people to connect?
Well, I think that because this is certainly not a mainstream conversation, and because collapse awareness is certainly not something that is being shared openly and widely, um, people appreciate the opportunity to come together and explore this with other people who are willing to listen and also are grappling with the same kinds of questions, feelings, and experiences that they are. So I think it does it meets this need of people to say, I've been I've been, let's say, aware. I've noticed this. There's been something happening that I couldn't put my finger on, and now that I'm reflecting on this more, and I have other people to be able to speak with and share with, I'm able to maybe embrace, open, stay with what I've been maybe noticing but couldn't put my finger on before. I'm able to be with that in a different way. And I think that's transformative, and that connection. And I think people want to stay connected after the course, whether it's with, one or two people maybe that they've made a special connection with over the 9 weeks, or even trying to keep a small group of people going. And we have one person who, from a course that started in January, course offering that started in January, is bringing people together on a once a month basis to stay connected and to continue discussion. And that's from a participant. Steve and I are not a part of that. So it's taken on a life of its own. And that's exactly, we're delighted about that.
That must feel good.
That's great. Yeah.
So
And I
well,
just want to say one other thing about that because what even feels even more amazing is that we had 18 people in our first group that we started last September. So Steve, Mary, and I led a group of 18 people through, let's say, our pilot of the course. And 9 of those 18 people by the end of the course said, we want to become course leaders to take this course and share it with other people. And that's how we've been able to continue to bring the course to many others. Steve and I will start our 3rd course offering this coming Tuesday, but we probably by the summer will have probably 10, maybe 11 course offerings underway or complete. And that's because of the course leaders, people that have taken the course that are stepping up.
that's a remarkable success. I
Yeah.
congratulate you.
Well, that was a piece of the vision right from the get-go, is that if it was meant to be, that this course would take on a life of its own, and that others would pick it up and run with it and take it around the globe. This one on Tuesday, we have people from New Zealand and Australia and Germany, uh, as well as the Canada and the US, that are going to be sitting in with us. But just for my short addition to Doug's response to your question, David, I would say people don't want to be alone. Most people don't want to go solo on this journey, and so tapping into groups like this, tapping into other people who have some semblance of understanding what collapse is about, collapse awareness, and moving into collapse acceptance. They're looking for their tribes, and when they find them, there's a sigh of relief. It's palpable. You can see it people's body language on the screen or in person, and there's great value in being able to connect with people that are seeing what I'm seeing, and observing what I'm observing, and gee, I guess I'm not going nuts. I'm not the only one. So yeah, it's great to have fellow travelers on this journey.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for traveling with me for this
Yeah.
half hour or so. Is there a place online that people can go to get more information about your course?
So we don't have a website, but we do have an email address. It's collapseacceptance@gmail.com. We created a course syllabus that is a Google Doc. So we're happy to share that with people who email us and would like to know more about the course format, structure. We list our guiding assumptions and principles as well on the syllabus, so people know where we're coming from and our perspective, worldview, and beliefs, to see if that, is something that they feel united with or connected with or intrigued about.
Great. I will put that email address in the video description below. Well, thank you, Steve Aman and Doug Della Pietra, for joining me today. I'm David Baum in Seattle. This has been Collapse Club. Until we meet again, farewell.